What's going on, Dapper D family? This is Jack, the cigar enthusiast, and I'm back with another segment of Virtual Smoke Deck. So, if you ain't ready yet, you don't have your cigars, don't worry. Go get your cigars, go get your wine, go get your drink. You're gonna want to be in this conversation. Man, I have an awesome special guest that's gonna really bring it to you, and I don't think you guys are really ready for the conversation. So let's go ahead, create a watch party for all your friends. Let's go ahead and get those shared to your groups, shared to everything on your social media platform, and then we're gonna get started. Get those cigars, get those cigars cut, and get your drink poured up because it's about to be a good one. And I hope you guys are ready. Man, how's everybody's Sunday going? It has to be going great because I know for sure me and Bob's are doing phenomenal right now, especially with this heat picking up here in Jacksonville, Florida. We actually went to the beach today and enjoyed a little bit of the sun. I know I look a little dark, so don't judge me, but it is what it is. Yeah. Everybody start dropping your name in the comment box so I can give you some shout outs. We have some gifts that we're going to end up offering for you guys to subscribe to after this video. So if you are able to stick through the entirety of this video, you're gonna be in good with some treats, okay? I don't know what's going on. This thing always does this every time. What's going on? All right. With that being said, this special guest that we have, we're going to share a very, very short story on how I met Mr. Bob and how this guy is blessing me with his presence and his knowledge as well. So about 3 weeks ago, we did a video of what Brother of the Leaf and Sisters of the Leaf means to cigar enthusiasts, right? Now, we all know that Brothers and Sisters of the Leaf is what BOTL and SOTL stand for. What I really wanted was to really get the mind going and really try to break down some of these racial barriers that we have, especially within our Brothers and Sisters of the Leaf. Because at the end of the day, there's no room for that, here in the cigar industry. But anyway, I posted into Brothers of the Leaf online community, which is one of the many groups that I'm part of, which is also Bob's actual group on Facebook. Anyway, we're going in. Bob calls me and says, "Look, Jack, I'm going to keep your post up, but I'm going to monitor it. And if it starts to get any type of negative publicity, I'm going to take it down. And I want you to know it's in a very, very respectful way. Just understand some people are not ready to have that conversation." And I said, "Bob, no problem. I understand it's going to ruffle some couple people's feathers. But again, that's not what we're here to talk about here on the Virtual Smoke Deck." Anyway, so Bob calls me again and says, "Hey, I had to take it down, but I want to let you know that at any point of time you need someone to talk to, call me," right? I didn't know Bob from the fly on the wall. Bob was just another guy in the cigar industry that once I really got in and learned his background, it was crazy. And as I get to know him more, this is definitely somebody we're going to keep in our network and hopefully able to really catch a face-to-face cigar with him, because I know he'll just pour so much into me. So anyway, me and Bob go on, and I was getting my lineup ready for the next couple of weeks of Virtual Smoke Deck, and I said, "Look, Bob will be a great person to bring in." Now, not really understanding Bob's background, I was like, at the end of the day, this guy is a phenomenal guy, and this is truly a brother of the leaf for me. And I said, I'm going to ask him. Bob is a very, very professional guy. So he reaches out, he starts sending me all his stuff, and I start realizing that Bob is a blessing sent to me from God. This is what I've been praying about. I've been praying about people putting, their knowledge into me and helping me really take this thing to the next level. And I think Bob is going to be able to take a lot of things to the next level, especially for everybody that's watching. You just got to watch. That's all you got to do. You got to watch. So without further ado, we're not going to prolong this. We're not going to take forever to do this. We're going to go ahead and bring Bob in. Everybody, get those cigars ready. Get those drinks poured up because Bob is tuned in with Jack at Dapper D Cigars on the virtual smoke deck. What's going on, Bob?
Hey, Jack. How are you, sir?
What?
How's
Man,
Florida?
I am great. Florida is freaking hot. I told, like I said in the beginning, and we went to the beach today, and man, that sun really beamed on us. Not mixed with that salt water is really not good.
Well, I tell you what, I don't think you know this. I grew up in Clearwater, and Florida was great. But when you hit July, August, and September, it's like miserable. So, all right, what are you smoking tonight?
Man, I'm smoking on a Aging Room Cigar Aficionado #1 cigar for 2019, the Cuantoro Nicaraguan. This is a Nicaraguan Puro, and it's a phenomenal stick. And quite frankly, this is the second time I done smoked this stick. So I knew I had to bring out something good for you, Bob. What you smoking on tonight?
Well, I've got two choices. We'll see how it goes. The first will be a Perdomo Damaso. This is the Toro size. Connecticut seed wrapper. Yeah, or Padron.
Yeah.
Padron. Sorry, man. What a rookie mistake. My goodness. You can tell I'm stressed out a little bit. But it's the Toro size, Nicaraguan binder and filler. This is by far one of my favorite cigars. I remember when George Padron came out with a Damaso.
Yes.
And I was going, we finally have a light wrapper cigar, and it wasn't any less in strength or body, but it is just a creamy start to the day. And then my second one, I don't know if we'll get there or not, but years ago, Eddie Ortega had his own cigar company called Ortega Cigars. And in 2013, so this cigar is 8 years old. In 2013, every month, he came out with a new blend, and he called it the Wild Bunch. And this one, I don't know if you can see this. This is #5. It's the Connecticut Broadleaf Maduro, and he named it after this guy right here, Dandy McCoy. So each one of the guys in the Wild Bunch were people in the industry. I think it was the February release. I don't know if you know Island Jim.
Yes,
Jim up in Pittsburgh.
That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite smokes going on. That's current at this moment.
Yeah, he was February's release. So these cigars no longer in production. If you can find one, get it. But I thought I'd break that out for tonight. And I'm lighting up.
That is a great cigar to start with. A lot of people don't understand, especially that Padron. I remember my first time going to Padron factory in Miami, Florida, and I met Nick. I believe Nick.
No, that's Perdomo.
No, not Nick. Not Nick Perdomo. What is
George?
Yeah, George. Actually,
yep.
I met George up there, and I came in on a Sunday. I was actually going on a cruise, and I went to the side door because if you know anything about the Padron factory, they have an actual like lounge seating area, but they also have a side door inside their gate for retailers.
Yeah.
And I went in there. I'm like, look, I'm a big Padron fan. I work here, yada yada yada. Would love to get a box of your Padron to take on the cruise with me. Man, that guy took me in. and treated me like a king. Gave me a Padron Damaso hat that I'm going to show you. You know, a tan Padron hat, the tent, the cigarellos. He gave me the box. I mean, it was freaking awesome. And I said, you know, I am a Padron fan, and the Damaso is one of the ones that really got me. Not the 64, not the 40th year, 90 year, none of that. The Damaso, because a lot of people think that's a Connecticut cigar, and it's not. It's far from it. But man, you got some great selections out there. I'm kind of jealous, man. That second stick that you mentioned, man. Man, I know that's a great stick.
Well, I hope so. It'll be good tonight.
Mm-hmm. So Bob, tell us a little about you. Before we go into that, I'm gonna give my brief introduction. I'm Jack, the cigar enthusiast. I'm the owner and operator of Dapper D Cigars, located here in Jacksonville, Florida. We are not currently open, but as you see, as on the banners, the tickler is scrolling past your screen. You can go shop at dapperDcigars.com for all your premium and boutique cigar needs at a very affordable prices. What we do here on the virtual smoke deck is simple. We're here to bring uncut, very raw conversations that you will most likely see within cigar lounges to your screen, so you can really get to understanding of what it is that we do and why we love this hobby so much. So with that being said, Bob, you got it from here. Tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Personal life, 63 years old, married to my wife, Debbie.
Bob.
Yeah. Married to my wife, Debbie, for 38 years. 4 daughters, all of them married to great guys. And we have 10 grandchildren and the 11th one on the way. We live in Central Virginia and have done a multiple variety of things in my career. So that's the short and skinny of me. I'm not short or I'm not skinny, but either way.
So tell us about your business background. What type of business ventures have you been able to be successful at in your time, your 63 years of life?
Yeah. Started out in church work and then taught on the university level a little bit. Went and got graduate degrees in education and in counseling.
That was like, this is trash. F. Go back and do it again.
Yeah. I don't know about that. It just kept on going.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I found we were at a church in California, and the leadership of that church, the laity of that church, were a number of executives from the technology industry in Silicon Valley. So AMD, HP. It was just an incredible experience. And I found out that I had a niche for looking at businesses that were struggling or that were stuck and figure out a strategy to turn them around. So moved back to Virginia from California, started a small marketing company that it kind of was my roots. Our client base at that point, we had clients, Christian Legal Society in Washington, D.C., National Rifle Association was a client for 20 years, a lot of political things. And during that whole time, I loved cigars and ended up having a couple events with the NRA, sponsored those. And then we just saw some businesses that were that could use our help. So started out with a restaurant. Because I had 4 daughters, we ended up taking over a bridal shop, a retail shop. The wife and her husband had run it for 30 years. He died of cancer, and she didn't know what to do with that. So we stepped in with that and rebuilt it. And then had another business come to us that was a staple steakhouse, high-end steakhouse in our city. And was ready to really close the door. So we stepped in and turned that around. And then the last one is the current business we have. It's a florist, a flower shop in our city that last year celebrated 100 years in business.
Wow.
And my wife runs that. We classify it as a woman-owned business. And so it is the oldest woman-owned florist on the East Coast.
Wow.
And that whole dynamic, talk about having to rebrand and rebuild and repackage. Floral industry has changed like crazy. And now you have more competition with, in your area, the Publix, the Kroger grocery stores, everybody selling flowers. So we really have to be up to our game.
Absolutely.
But probably several years ago, because of my love cigars, we had one cigar shop in our town that was struggling, and I thought that we could make an impact. And in 2009, started City Place Cigars, and eventually ended up going to 2 locations.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of my background.
You know, what's crazy is everything that I heard, right? I heard a lot, everything that you said, but everything that I heard was businesses that were struggling. You came in and really changed the dynamics and really rebranded that. What was some of those things that you felt caused those businesses to fail, and why?
That's a great question, Jack. A lot of times people just start doing the same things over and over and over again. And I often say that there are lessons learned, but until we make those lessons lived, they really don't have an impact on our lives. So a lot of these people would go to seminars, they bring in consultants, they would learn the accounting things they need to do. They would learn the marketing things that they needed to do. They would learn the inventory things they needed to do, but they would never make those changes. They were lessons learned, but not lessons lived. So that was probably the main common thread that we saw. So it's easy from the outside looking in, seeing why they're stuck. It's easy from the outside looking in, seeing why why their business has plateaued and has sometimes even gone down. And then you do have situations like the sad case of the bridal shop, where a woman and her husband started it, and she lost her life partner.
Yeah.
And she just lost hope. So there it was not so much they were stuck because of a tragedy in life, and they were just looking for a respectable, honorable way not to let their dream die, but to hand it over to someone who would have passion for it and make it grow and help it go to another level. So,
and you know what's crazy is, that comment, lesson learned but not lesson lived. That is something that a lot of people need to learn to just apply to life. Oftentimes, especially in business, you never want to constantly do the same thing that may cause the red flag or may cause the out or ouchie for that matter in your business. You bring somebody in to help you change it, and then all of a sudden you go right back to it. Yeah. And again, especially as we start to grow our brand and everything that we're trying to do, that is something that I'm going to always remember is always, always, always don't make it just a lesson learned, but make it a lesson lived. And I think that goes into a lot of things. So man, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Jack, there's two things you can look at. We talk about hustle a lot. You got to have hustle. Some guys hustle, but they're running in place.
Yep.
They've like just got movement. Yeah, they just got movement. They're like a rat on a treadmill, or a mouse in a treadmill. They're just a treadmill. They just keep on going and going and going. If you have true hustle, then you're moving from one location to the next with the greatest level of determination and a break lightning speed of velocity. You're not stick there spinning your wheels. You're going ahead moving forward. So I have we'll talk about it later, but a lot of times we get too comfortable in our successes. And I mean, you start looking at a balance sheet, a P&L,
Yeah.
and you start seeing where you're having growth and you see increase
A
in sales.
P&L, 1 second, Bob. A
Yeah.
P&L is a profit and loss data sheet.
Right. It's how much money goes out, how much money comes in.
Absolutely.
Or the other way around. So a lot of times you think if you're making money, you've got 5-10% increase, you think things are really going well, and you get comfortable with where you are, and you never start wanting to find out if there's somebody out there who's doing it better than you are.
Absolutely.
And I have a friend who often says the comfort zone is the danger zone.
Absolutely.
Because that's where we become complacent. That's where we lose our edge. That's when we start to hustle by running in place instead of hustling to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's funny that you say that, because a lot of people don't understand that. You know, as businesses grow, you have to keep revisiting your growth strategy. And as your growth strategy grows, or your operation grows, that growth strategy needs to grow. You also need to put it, again, something bigger that you can do, something bigger than that you can do, something bigger than that you can do. Otherwise, you get in that comfort zone. And that's exactly why I got out the Navy. Right there. Yeah. Right there is the perfect thing, because a lot of people in the Navy stay in their comfort zone, right? They're, you know, the easy check is easy this, is easy that. And they don't really understand that there's more to life.
Yeah.
And again, business owners have to understand, especially, you know, from your experience, if you don't understand growth, you're going to understand very quickly what a broken business is.
Yeah.
So, man, that's awesome. So, you started Cigar Place, City Cigar Place, right?
Or City Place Cigar.
City Place Cigar. I had them C's backwards.
Yeah.
So you started City Place Cigars. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what made that a successful lounge, and what are some things that you put in place to really make sure the dynamics within that lounge stuck in place.
That's good. Well, first of all, let me tell you why we started it. We'll probably talk about this more a little bit later. I've always had a desire for mentorship and discipleship of men, whether it's in business, whether in life. But if you can't pour your life into the next generation, then you have nothing to leave for your legacy.
Come on, preach.
So one of the things that I found in our area is that men, you know, I'll give you a footprint of Lynchburg, where I live. In our city, you don't have bars. In Virginia, in most parts, you don't have bars. You can't serve alcohol unless you have food. So the commonality, the common thought of a bar is, man, that's where guys go after work. They sit, they talk, they converse. Well, you don't have that kind of footprint here. In all of my traveling to cigar shops, I found out that no matter what city I was in, whether it's DC, or whether it's Clearwater, Florida, or Orlando at Corona Cigars, wherever you go, you can sit down in a lounge, you can light up a cigar, and for 45 minutes to an hour, you can engage in conversation, because you can't smoke a cigar quick.
Mm-hmm.
So part of our reason for starting City Place Cigar was to mentor and influence men in a positive way. So because of that, we had to take care of the basics for a cigar shop. We had to make sure we had inventory.
Mm-hmm.
We had to make sure we had the right inventory and we bought right. We had to make sure that we had proper circulation, so guys would come in, they didn't smell like smoke when they left, as best as we could.
Right.
Because you're still going to do that.
Absolutely.
And then we had to create the culture. And by the culture, I meant that was our simple mission, why we were in business and what we wanted to accomplish. So in doing that, our culture, we had 4 TVs. Our TVs were always on sports and news.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't going to watch the daytime soap operas. We weren't going to watch anything, you know, they're just sports and news. And we had plenty of options for that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In our culture, It was always one of respect. So the guys who worked for us were all trained in talking to people and calling them Mr. or Mrs. And it wasn't till a while until we wait for the customer to say, listen, don't call me Mr., call me Paul.
Exactly.
Okay. And then we'd have that opportunity. And then this was the tough one in a cigar lounge. And I don't want you to think that my ears are virgin, but we constantly kept a rein on how much cussing took place.
Because it's not a bar.
No, and it's okay for somebody to drop a shit or a damn or something like that. But once you start doing it every other word, I mean, literally every other word.
Absolutely.
Then you've got to kind of sit down and say, hey, listen, man, we appreciate you being here. Want you to be here. But some of the guys, they just don't know how to take what you're saying. And if you could kind of temper it down a little bit, and never had anybody really have any kind of issue with that. And then customer service was the fourth thing.
Absolutely.
That was really key. And we trained our guys. We probably went overboard, but the first Saturday of every month, we had an employee meeting. I paid them to be on the clock. I'd stop and get donuts or bagels or McDonald's or Hardee's or whatever. We'd sit there and I would share with them the month sales beforehand. We would look at who the top customers were. We would look at what were the top selling cigars during that month. We would look at the calendar of upcoming events. And then I would always take the last few minutes and say, tell me what we can do to make our shop better. And it wasn't just asking their feedback, it was honoring their feedback and looking at it. And Jack, I want to tell you, we had some great ideas come out. So that's kind of how we started. I had never been in the cigar industry before. I made a ton of mistakes. But I quickly learned the other thing is I couldn't put in the humidor just what I wanted to smoke. I had to have that rounded out profile for cigar lovers. And again, contrary to most guys, you had to have a very good offering of the main legacy brands. You at least had to offer a Macanudo. You at least had to offer a Partagas. You had to do those. And then probably within 6 months to a year, we found out that sweet spot for our shop. Which cigars did we bring in that sold no matter what time of the year it was? And then I was a fiend for tracking numbers. I wanted to make sure that we were always increasing and doing what we did the previous year, the previous month. So that was kind of it.
So I don't want to get too deep into it, but let's just tell us how successful those lounges was. Based on now, I want everybody that's kind of trapped in on this to understand this is just based on cigar sales. When you put everything that he has just said in place, this is what he did. And you don't have to you can do generalization numbers.
Yeah, our best, we ended up opening 2 shops.
You did good.
Yeah, we had a cigar shop downtown that ended up closing up, and we really didn't want somebody moving into that location. So we ended up going down there. It was a building built in the early 1900s. We totally gutted it, put in a 40-foot walk-in humidor. It's still in existence today. I ended up selling the cigar shops in 2016, and my former partner and one of my very good friends owns the one downtown. So I'm going to just give you the first shop we opened. The best year we had was right at $480,000 for one shop. One shop.
He has 2.
Yeah.
He had 2.
Yeah.
And I tell people I don't tell people, but what I will say is when you have everything that you have set in place to succeed, 9 times out of 10, you're going to succeed. There is no reason for you not. A lot of people don't put their employees' opinions into it. And I mean, I think, the sales and, really getting them going, getting their minds going on how to make the lounge better. That was awesome. That's really dope. So,
yeah. And Jack, the other thing is Lynchburg's a small city. We have 85, 90,000 people, and that's it. So someone once told me, one of the cigar reps told me, because when I was thinking about expanding, he said there's an unwritten code that you look at a city and see how many Starbucks that it has. He said if a city has 2 Starbucks, you could probably handle 2 cigar shops. And at that point, we had just opened up the second Starbucks in our city, so I felt pretty good with that. But one of my friends who is the owner of the other shop now, he also owns 5 Golden Corral restaurants up in Northern Virginia.
Jesus.
So he understands, and he was telling me, he said, I want you to really capture this. He said 1 + 1 does not always equal 2 when you're opening up a second location. He said, you think you're going to have double the money. He said, but you're going to have more than double the expenses and more than double the headaches. Absolutely. And he was 100% right.
Man, that is awesome. And I think especially for the viewers that are watching, I think that is something that you really need to think about. And I think those are some great principles to add to your business. So just to expound on that, right? Just a little bit. The cigar industry, not having, understanding of the industry, but understanding businesses in a whole, what was some of the hurdles that you had to overcome, and you had to overcome them quick? Otherwise, it would have been detrimental to the business.
Yeah. First thing is relationships within the industry. You got to build your relationships, and you've got to make sure you honor those relationships, because the cigar industry is very tight-knit. Very tight-knit. So you know this because of your previous experience as a lounge manager. You can get to know reps, you can do all that kind of stuff, but just like you treat your customers well, you need to treat your reps well.
Absolutely.
And just as you keep your word with your customers, you need to keep your word with your reps and your manufacturers. So that was something I didn't know the closeness, the tightness of the cigar industry group. So that was something really good to learn. The other thing is that cigar reps, all of them think their cigars are the best, and there's not enough room in your humidor to have everybody's cigars.
Yeah.
So you have to spend an incredible amount of time in research to see what you want to put in. And most people would go to Cigar Aficionado's, top 20 list and say we're going to put those in the shop. Or there's a new boutique that has just come out. Pete Johnson's just come out with a brand new, Raphael has just come out with a new cigar, all that kind of stuff. And people will talk it up and talk the hype and say you got to bring these in. Well, when you bring those in,
are they going to sell?
Those people may buy 1 or 2 cigars, maybe 4 or 5 if they really like it.
Yeah.
But you're not into it for the individual stick sale. You're into it for the box sale. So those brands that people constantly purchase, those are the box sale ones. That was another thing that I had to get through my head. And then the third thing that I didn't know, it was a lesson that I really had to learn and live. That was the value of cigar events.
Yeah.
Because I could bring in, and I'll just tell you, in our shop, Bill Paley from La Polina Cigars came.
Yeah. Froze up, Bill. Bob. Sorry. Well, like he was saying, those relationships are definitely key, and I think they're absolutely key, especially within cigars itself. Okay. There you go, Bob.
I'm back. Okay. We had Bill Paley, La Polina Cigars. Nick Perdomo came. George Padron came to our shop. Took me 2 years to get him. In fact, I'll tell you a funny.
That's crazy.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. Oh yeah, I had met George, been down to Miami, went to the factory there.
Yeah.
And then I said, I've got to get him to come to my shop. So I set on my counter a petition that said the following customers will attend an event if George Padron comes. And Jack, I had 101 signatures. So I photocopied that petition. I put it in an envelope and I FedExed overnighted it to George Padron in Miami. Well, about a week later, my cell phone rings, and the name Cesar Gadea comes up, who is the purchasing manager.
Yep.
And I think Cesar's calling me about
Cesar's awesome.
Yeah. So I pick up the phone. I said, "Hey, Cesar, how are you doing?" He went, "Bob, this is George." And I went, "George Padron?" And he went, "Yeah." And then he said, "No one's ever sent us a petition like that before. I'll come to an event. We just have to work it out." And that was it. And a year later, he came.
And for everybody to understand how big it is for the Padron family to attend an event or have an event in a cigar lounge, they don't just come up into anybody's lounge. Like, you have to be not only selling their product heavily, but you also have to have some type of understanding and relationship with them. And that goes back into what you said earlier about you have to have relationships with your reps. But Padron is what everybody wants to sell in their lounge.
Yep.
And I tell you what, you know as well as I know, it's not easy to get Padron in your lounge.
No. It's not easy to get them to stock your shelves, and it's not easy to get them for an event. Yeah. So those events really became a footprint for us. One of the greatest guys I ever had for an event was Jonathan Drew. When we booked him, they said he'll be there from 7 till 9. We can't stay longer than 2 hours. Well, he got there at 6:30, and he stayed till 10:30. He talked to every single customer, took pictures with every single customer, and took time and told the story of sleeping on the floor in Nicaragua when they were starting to build their brand.
For some people that don't know Jonathan Drew, tell us who Jonathan Drew is, Bob.
Jonathan Drew was one of the founders of Drew Estates.
Yeah.
So when you think acid, when you think even
Underground Shade,
Liga Privada, you think Kentucky Fire Cured.
Yeah.
All those are all Jonathan Drew's babies. Yeah. So those events, what that allowed us to do, that allows us for the customer to tap, they would hate me for saying this, but cigar royalty or cigar, the upper echelon.
Yeah.
And when they did that, those customers knew that those guys were just like them.
Yeah.
They both shared the love for a cigar. I remember Bill Paley, the guy who started La Polina Cigars.
Yeah.
His great-grandfather, I believe his grandfather started CBS, the CBS network.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy has so much money. He has his own park in New York City.
Crazy.
Yeah, and the reason he has his own park is because he wants to go smoke cigars there. So we're talking a guy that has more money than you and I could probably ever dream of.
Yeah.
And he sat there and he held up his cigar and he said, "This is a work of art." He said, "It takes over 300 hands to make this cigar. It takes almost 7 years from seed to this product."
Absolutely.
And he said, "I've been very blessed in my life." And he said, "This is the only work of art that I could light a match to and burn and enjoy." And everybody just started cracking up.
Because it's true.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand, like for a company, like I'm sure you're very familiar with Jorge Padron.
Yeah.
Story. He literally, a real quick story. We're not gonna do the long drawn out one, but he created a cigar to replicate the seed of a Cuban cigar. That's exactly what he was trying to do. He made some cigars from Nicaragua, brought them back, put them on one shelf to see if they will sell, so he knows the production part of it. One sold. And it was the one guy that said, if you make this cigar, I will buy it. Yeah. Which is, again, what you said, bring in that cigar, I'm going to buy it for sure. And they only buy one or two.
Yeah.
So he sold that box to him. Anyway, he goes back to that store, a couple weeks or a month later, and realized one sold. He paid them for the rest of those cigars because clearly he knew those wasn't replicating what he wanted to replicate. He went back, and that's when he just, started doing the box press cigars and introduced them again. Sold out like that.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people don't understand the process it goes into making this beautiful steak. Understanding that the time, the effort, how many flips they did during the aging, the fermentation process, how many times they had to elevate that within that process, how many times they had to look at that leaf, touch that leaf to know that it was ready for cultivation, how many times they had to touch the seeds and put the seeds in the, we could go into it all day, but a lot of people don't understand that. But yeah, that's crazy, man. You are truly what a lot of cigar lounges, especially in the retail sector of it, want to achieve. But let's switch gears a little bit. We know you were successful in the cigar lounge, and which really, got us where we are here and able to enjoy that steak. But what made you do some of the other ventures that you dove into outside the fact that they were struggling? What made you go in there and be like, well, I'm going to take this business. I'm going to mold this business. I'm going to build this business.
Yeah, that's a great question too. So with each of them, there was an aspect of legacy already built with that business. So with the bridal shop, husband and wife started it. He died of cancer. It was something that was established in our city. So to help resurrect that, change the mentality that when something's broke, we throw it out instead of repair it, rebuild it, remake it. The steakhouse was probably the same way. It was a staple. In fact, that's my wife and I. That was the place we had our first date in 1982, and it was one of those cigar shops where the waiters still wore a tuxedo. It still was yes, ma'am, yes, sir. There was one gentleman there who not only served important people in our city, but we had a president come to our city one time and have dinner there, and Culpepper waited on him, and Culpepper would always take your baked potato. He would slice it and he would pinch it so you wouldn't have to do it because it was too hot.
Yeah.
And he always had his line. So that one had a legacy also. And it would have been a shame for that to close down. So it was taking that and again, revisioning it, rebranding it, remaking it. And then the flower shop is another one. Again, when we took it over, it had been in business for almost 90 years. So for me, it was the combination of the fact that they had made a contribution to our community. There were people whose children and grandchildren had been there. And it was an opportunity to take that and again, not throw it away because it was broken, but fix it and repair it so it can move on to the future.
Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
So that's right. With two of those, in fact, all of them, we've turned them over to other business owners, and each one of those is still in existence today.
Wow.
With the owners that we turned them over to. That's so exciting.
And that is major because too many times people just fall in love with their passion. But what a lot of people don't understand is that a successful businessman or woman has multiple streams, multiple avenues that they can really tap into and be an asset in the rebranding process. A lot of people don't understand bar rescue is a thing because a bar was doing poorly, and they realized it was the leadership, it was the complacency of that owner, it was whatever that was that's caused that lounge to go under. It needed to be changed. And if you ever watch Bar Rescue, you really get a keen understanding of not only how to run a successful business, but how to overhaul one too, even as it's been down in the mud a little bit. So out of those not restaurants, those businesses that you brought up, which one would you say is the most successful, and which one would you say was the hardest to run, and why?
I think the jury's still out. I think the flower shop's going to be the most successful. Again, we're 10 years into it. That'll be the one where we have to have probably the final exit strategy for us. And that's when I say that's the most successful, I feel, is because we not only had to rebirth it, we relocated it. When we relocated it, the property that was on, we ended up purchasing that when we bought the business. So we ended up selling it to a bank, and that ended up making that business debt free. So the only indebtedness that business has now is to us, and a few vendors, but that's just accounts payable. So I think that's going to be it. And again, it was kind of fun watching it celebrate 100 years. So that was good. The hardest one was the steakhouse. Because it was steeped in tradition. If we were one of the first restaurants in our area to have a salad bar, which now is so old school. But if you changed one thing on that salad bar,
the customers,
you had people coming up and going, "What's going on? Is this place in trouble?" I mean, it was phenomenal. Huh?
You don't have bell peppers anymore.
Yeah. I think one time, we ended up always having shredded lettuce. And that was something that they had from day one, shredded lettuce. And I think one time we put romaine in there because we thought it would be healthier. And man, we just caught hell for it. It was just not good. But that was also the toughest one because any restaurant is a business of pennies. You have very low profit margins unless you manage the food cost, the labor cost, and 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents make an incredible difference. That was probably also the hardest one because we had an alcohol license and we had to work constantly with it. Virginia is an alcohol beverage controlled state. So they had to inventory our alcohol on a regular basis. So we go to a restaurant occasionally, all the time in our neighborhood. It's not uncommon for a guy to come out at the end of the night and, hey, we just got this bourbon in. It's 12 years old. Have some. Well, ABC would kind of look at that and frown on that. So there were a lot of regulations that had to go along with that. So that was probably the hardest one.
ABC stands for Alcohol Beverage Commission Control.
Alcohol beverage control.
And that regulations on alcohol really, a lot of people be like, man, you don't got liquor. But I tell you what, a liquor license here in Florida is $400,000.
Wow.
$400,000. And if you want to serve, you can get a cheaper liquor license, but you have to have 150 seats in order to do so.
Wow.
So you've been in the cigar, not only the cigar industry, but the retail industry, and restaurants and different things like that. You understand, how hard it is to do 150 seats. Let alone 400,000. Now you got to make your money back in maybe 2-3 years. If not quicker. But the thing about it is, who is sitting on, $400,000 that they can just put into a license?
Well, and in Virginia, if you have alcohol, you have to have food. If you have food, you can't have smoke. So it's there's not a way to do alcohol in a cigar shop here that's equitable. You just can't do it.
Yeah. And that's just kind of the same way here. And they make it really, really, really hard. So as I don't think we really hit on it, your background in the kind of the startup venture, but you used to work as an advisor for the SBA, helping small businesses,
Yep.
in the beginning processes and really getting them to understand the process that it goes into creating that perfect business plan and having, quotes and understand what accounts receivable, what accounts payables are, being able to manage those. What is some advice you would give to people that are looking to start their own cigar lounge or restaurant or whatever the business may be?
That's good. Yeah. So between the SBA advisorship, and then I also worked with the local university in their Center of Entrepreneurship. And I classify myself probably more of an entrepreneur, someone who wants to not only create jobs, but economic opportunity in the community. So here's a couple things. One is you may think your idea is a good idea, and everybody thinks their idea is a good idea. But until you put pen to paper, until you realize what it's going to cost you, it's just an idea.
Yep.
And you can't make money on your idea unless you invest and do the hard work in building a business plan, in figuring out what it's going to take for you to make it, and even having some built-in pivot points that if you're heading one direction, you realize it's not going to, you've already calculated where you're going to go. So that's the critical thing. The other thing is, just because you like doing it, there's a difference between having a hobby and having a business. I know a lot of guys who have a cigar shop and it's a hobby for them. It's not a business. It's a place where they end up getting their cigars at cost. Mm-hmm. It's a place where they sit there and talk with their friends. It's a place where they've got enough to cover all their expenses. But if you're building a business, you're looking already at an exit strategy.
Yes.
You never start your business without thinking how you're going to get out of your business.
Absolutely.
And unless you build a business, you're not going to create any value for that business, and you're not going to accrue wealth after the 10 or 15 years you have in there to build it. So that's the most critical part. There's so many classes out there. There's so many things you can get online that walk you through writing a business plan. So you can do all that kind of stuff. The other thing is, and this goes back to my spiritual roots a little bit, Jack. Everybody has to have a Paul and everybody has to have a Timothy. Everybody has to have someone who's mentoring them, who's pouring into them, and everybody has to be pouring into somebody else. If I look at myself as a conduit, you put something in the top, then it's got to come out the bottom.
Absolutely.
If I hoard it in the middle, then I don't have room to bring new stuff into the top.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I did with City Place Cigar, every summer on Thursdays, I would hop in the car and I would visit cigar shops in a 350-mile radius of our city.
Okay.
And I'd probably knock out 2 or 3 cigar shops on that Thursday. And I would go introduce myself. I would tell the owner, here's why I'm here. I want to learn from you. I mean, at that point, I'm 55 years old.
Right.
But I want to learn something.
Absolutely.
And I don't care what it was. If I ended that day and I didn't learn anything, then I was too proud to see what I could learn.
Absolutely.
So I constantly put myself in an opportunity where people were pouring into me, and then I would take those same things and pour them out in my life.
And that's a big thing, Bob. A lot of people get sidetracked in their ideas and their businesses, and they just simply don't want to learn from nobody. It's like, what can you teach me? I don't want you to teach me. I don't want you to know what I'm doing. But here in the cigar industry, especially here in the Jacksonville area, I shared with you a little bit earlier, is kind of populated with one brand, and a lot of them don't understand that I have been in their establishment. I have patronized them. I have understood from them, but I would love to just have that conversation with them and be like, look, we are one family. We are one bond. We are here for the same thing, regardless of who comes to who shop, who comes to who lounge, who patronizes who establishment. We still need to constantly learn, especially here in Florida. That same content, with 350-mile radius, I can go to Miami. And in Miami, every single brand has an establishment in Miami. Cigar companies that don't have lounges in Florida. And that's a great idea. I love that idea. And that's probably one I'm going to have to adopt too, because I think that is awesome. If you're not learning, you're dying.
Absolutely.
That's across the board, and a lot of people just don't understand that, and which is why they experience, things. I was on a live last week with unfiltered No Chaser. And we went on there and we spoke about, there's a bunch of people doing t-shirt businesses and a bunch of people doing this and a bunch of people doing that. There's a bunch of people selling cigars. But what is going to really make you the differentiating factor to those businesses? And it really makes you think. What makes people want to come to your lounge or your place of businesses or business versus somebody else's? And I think that is key right there. It's just you have to have the ability to learn and soak up as much as you possibly can, which is why I try to teach people as much as I possibly can about developing their craft. It looks like you moved to the other cigar, by the way.
I did just now.
Oh man, I'm jealous, man. but a lot of people don't understand, Bob, and I think it's that hard conversation to have with self. Is self, are you going to grow or are you going to die? But man, that's crazy. So I asked you from your personal experiences. I know, especially part of us starting Dapper D Cigar Lounge, Dapper D Cigars, as well as online. There has to be some type of equity injection into your place of businesses, either through your own personal savings, through investors, doing different things of that nature. What is some advice you would give on people that is trying to kind of figure that out and is not facing their dreams simply due to the fact is they don't understand where the money is going to come from for the injection side?
Yeah, that's tough, because in this world, unless you've had a career and you saved money, or you're credit worthy enough to go to a bank, or, and I hate to use this last one, or you're credit worthy enough to have a bunch of credit cards that don't have anything on them, then it's going to be hard to do that.
Yeah.
Because even if you go out and get investors, you have to have someone who understands your passion and understands the business model and trusts you enough to do that.
Yeah.
So that's probably the toughest part, Jack. Yeah. And the easiest thing is to start slow and small and build and increase your footprint. Or there's a guy who used to be a songwriter. In fact, he ran the music teams at Disney World. And I remember them having a song that said, "The dream never dies, just the dreamer."
Yeah.
So the dream will never die.
Dang, that's deep.
Yeah, and you just have to outlive your dream, which means sometimes you have to make sequential baby steps in order to get to your dream. So I've always been a guy that, if I'm going to speak big terms, if the goal is $100,000, if I put that goal out in front of me, that's going to be awful hard to try to attain.
Mm-hmm.
But if I put 10 goals in front of me of $10,000, once I reach that first one, I've got new energy to reach the second one. And once I reached the second one, I got more energy to reach the third. And so if I take my business plan and I also sequentially order that, then when I reach this threshold, I'm doing this. This threshold, I'm doing this. This threshold, I'm doing this. Pretty soon, I'm at that point where I've knocked out all my thresholds and I'm able to get there.
Absolutely.
So that's the biggest key for money at that point.
And you know that's deep, you know, and I really want people to kind of key in on that. You know, too many times we get a figure in our head that we need to, oh, I need to hit 200,000. Okay. Tell me how you plan on going to get 200,000 if you can't get 1,000 or a couple hundred or 10,000 or 25,000. If you can't get those numbers, then you can't go out there and say, I'm going to create 200,000. But most importantly, what you said is investors understand passion. When
Right.
you understand passion, then you understand that you have somebody here that's not only a good investment, but that's going to take care of their investment.
Yeah.
And I think that is key, you know, because we don't come from money. You know, me, my wife, and I have an investor. Me, my wife, and my investor, we had long conversations. And at no point in time did I sit here and say, look, we're going to do this. And come on, guys, I need you guys to get behind me. We had multiple meetings. We had multiple understandings, multiple conversations, multiple ways on how to grow and how to make sure that when we do this, it's centered behind passion. If anybody know me personally, they know that Dapper D Cigars is centered behind passion. I have a passion for cigars, which is why I started educating on cigars before I even decided I'm going to retail cigars, before I decided I'm going to launch my own brand, before I decided I'm going to do this. And I think that is key. Passion is going to take you a long way. It is not, you know, when you're talking about being an entrepreneur, the last thing that you want to talk about is, yeah, I'm going to go in this business because I hear it's successful. Okay. It is a successful industry, but are you going to be successful in the industry?
Yeah.
Are you going to do it? Do you have the passion, the drive, the ambition, the dedication, the motivation to be successful in that industry? That's the thing. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. And I think that's a lot of things that crumple people's mindsets because they take their brain and put it in this locked cage. And the only code to that cage to get their brain out is a code they created.
Yeah.
Which is also the code they won't put in.
Yeah.
Because you're still telling yourself on why you can and why you can't do this, or you're chasing something called a dollar. And that is never good. It's your passion and the dollar is going to come.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome, bro. That is awesome. So understanding business as a whole, right? Understanding the successes of a business, the hardships of a business, the mindsets that got to go into becoming a business. Do you think everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur?
No.
Why?
No. Well, you've got grinders, you've got finders, and you have conceivers. And conceivers can look at something where there's nothing and figure out that it can be something and how they're going to do it. So I have friends who would love to be in the cigar industry, love to open up their shop, but all they do is just look at one step ahead of them. There's a teaching that talks about scriptural insight that is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. I've got to look at that lamp where I'm stepping right now, but I've also got to be able to see the light down the path. And I've got to be able to make sure that both those lights are in alignment.
Yeah.
It's just like if you're a target shooter or if you work with lasers, in your target sights, you've got one sight here at the butt of your firearm. You've got another sight at the nose of your firearm. And those two sights have to line up. It doesn't matter what your eyes see. Those sights have to line up. That lamp and that light have to line up. So some guys only see the lamp. You got to be able to see the lamp and the light.
And you know, that is hard for people to really understand, because people be like, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to work for anybody. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. But at the end of the day, do you have that entrepreneur mindset? When things get hard, are you going to stop? Are you going
to pivot?
Exactly. Are you going to change your pathway to continue to get around that light? Because if you want to be technical, Jesus had no easy route to getting salvation at all.
Yeah.
Every time he reached a pivot point or a bump in the road, he didn't say, how can I get around this bump?
Yeah.
But more or less, how can I fix this bump?
Yeah.
To go over it.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest thing that we have to focus on, is stop looking at businesses as what we can gain from it, but looking at businesses of understanding it's going to be hardship. And if you do not have the equations to get over those hardships, then they're going to continue to be hardships. It doesn't matter how much praying you're doing. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It does not matter what your mindset is, what you think about your business proposition. If you do not have that alignment on those two sites, that step to get into the light, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time.
Yeah. And Jack, I think the other thing that's really critical, and we're kind of drifting into that. My wife and I, we've never had a business where it's primarily about us. That sounds weird because we're building the business. But if we don't have the mindset of serving others, serving our employees, serving our customers, serving our community, and in our case in the cigar shop, even serving our reps, then we're not going to build a sustaining business. I've told you before, one of the reasons I got into the cigar shop was to influence men, and I don't mind sharing this, but influencing men not only for the betterment of their lives, but for a kingdom purpose. Believing that God is our creator makes all of us, doesn't matter what color hue is in our skin.
Absolutely.
We're all made in the image of our creator.
Absolutely.
So if I have a creator, then I need to be creating. I need to be cultivating. So we had one rep in particular. He lived in Chicago, but his sales region was the East Coast. So he would see his family once every 8 weeks, 2 young boys. And at our shop on a Tuesday night, we would have a men's study. We'd close at 9:00. We'd have 40, 50 guys come, and we would have a study around principles in God's word. And Matt came one time and just enjoyed it. His next trip, I'm sitting with him with 2 of our guys who work for us. And he said, I got to tell you something. He said, most cities I go to, I have to worry about sitting in a bar at night, worrying about if someone's going to come and pick me, try to set up so I pick them up, worry about staying in a hotel. He said, I make this cigar shop my last stop of my day, because I know when I come here, you guys care about me, you care about my family, you care about my work, and you care about my soul. And the guy's a martial arts guy, redheaded. That's a bad combination. If you got redhead and you're a martial arts guy. But he was a tough dude. And he sat there with a tear in his eye, saying, if it wasn't for a shop like this, I don't know if I'd leave a legacy for my boys. Dude, that's the whole thing. So unless you enter, and again, I'm looking at through a lens, because I think even our businesses were birthed in our hearts by God. And because of that, I'm a steward. It's really not my business. It's his business.
It's his business. Absolutely.
And he has entrusted me with it. And this is going to sound harsh when I say that. If I'm going to screw God, I'm really in bad shape. So I'm going to make sure that I'm endeavoring to do everything I can to not only build a good business with a good reputation, but to serve those in my community and who work for me, my customers, in order for people to see my light and glorify the good works in my Father who's in heaven.
Amen.
So,
Amen. You know, and you know, that's the biggest thing is too many times we try to do this on our own. You know, people ask me, you know, Jack, you know, what was the reason? What's the reason for, you know, starting Dapper D's? And I said, you know, obviously, honestly, it's hard to sit here and say that we are doing this just because of the passion. You know, we all know, especially children of God, is we need to constantly be pouring into people, right?
Yep.
Expanding his work, you know, again, showing people who he is. And I tell you what, I'll be honest with you, Bob. If it wasn't for God's favor and mercy on our operation, we would not be where we are. You know, it's just crazy how things work and how things tend to pan out when you put him first. And I think that's crazy, especially for, you know, situations like your lounge, you know, like, man, wow, that's all I'm gonna say, you know. And it kind of leads us into our last really conversation is, you know, his grace and mercy is great, and we all know that. But what do you really feel like your spirituality and your connection with God or whoever it is? And we're not just, you know, caddying God. This is for everybody that, you know, has different beliefs as well. But whoever their higher being is, how do you think that played in your successes as a person, as a professional, as a minister, as well as, you know, a cigar lounge owner?
Yeah. Again, great question. I can probably say it like this: if I model God's mercy, if I model God's mercy and grace, and I go back to the illustration of if something's poured in the top, it's got to come out the bottom. If I clog it up and become selfish with God's grace and with God's mercy, then I'm not going to be able to pour into the lives of other people. So it was not uncommon for us in our cigar shop to have two chairs, one chair sitting a Commonwealth's attorney, and the next to him is a guy that he may have tried a case against. You know, somebody who served time right next to him. And they're sitting there because of this product. And they're able to have a conversation. That is nothing more than the grace and mercy of God being shown. That's two men pouring their lives into each other. And I've had a lot of people, you're going to have to kind of forgive this illustration, but I've had a lot of people try to say, explain to me how God works. What's that like? What's that mean? And I'd hold up a cigar like this. And I go, this cigar has three components. It's got a wrapper, it's got a binder, and it has filler. I said, I don't know if you've ever just tried to smoke the wrapper, but if you do, it won't last long.
No.
I don't know if you've ever tried to smoke binder, but sometimes binders are really bitter by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just take tobacco that's a filler, there's no flavor profile to it.
Absolutely not.
The flavor's in the wrapper. The binder helps the rate of burn. And the combustion, the long-lasting satisfaction of the cigar is in the filler.
Absolutely.
I said, this is God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely.
All three combined in one give me a full exposure of God's grace, God's mercy, God's forgiveness, God's compassion, God's redemptive work, God's patience. And all those things really help create for us an attitude of love, of hope, of opportunity. As you and I are talking, let's just be real candid. I'm white, you're black.
Absolutely.
I'm old, you're young.
Absolutely.
You served in the military, I didn't.
Absolutely.
You're athletic, and I wish to be an athlete. But in all those things, there's a commonality that you and I have the same creator. You and I experience the same grace. It's only one color of blood that redeemed both of us, and that's red.
Yeah.
And I don't care what color the hue is of your skin, our blood is still red. And I'm not getting patriotic, but we also still have a love for our country too.
Absolutely.
But because of that, there's a brotherhood, not just of the leaf. There's another BOTL, and that's a brotherhood of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And we share that, and that's God's grace and mercy to me.
Man, that is deep. That is deep. I want y'all to soak that in. Bob, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your wisdom and, you know, just blessing us with your knowledge and your presence on, you know, today's segment of Virtual Cigar Smoke Deck. I know you made it into 2. I know that Damaso is well, you had a Toro, so you just smoked it quick.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just crazy what an hour of 15, 20, an hour and 30 minutes, 2 hours can do to somebody. It can really lighten their soul and really, you know, pour into some wisdom to them. And we really do appreciate you for that. Everybody, thank Bob for coming through and blessing us with his presence. Bob, thank you so much for coming through. This concludes our segment of Virtual Smoke Deck. Thank you so much, Bob, and you have a great day, good sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And buddy, you're a champion. You're going to do great things.
Thank
and
you
I'm
so
proud
much.
of you.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. All right, bye, buddy. Hey, so everybody, man, that concludes our segment of Virtual Smoke Deck with Bob Miller. I told you guys you didn't want to miss this. He poured out a lot of nuggets and a lot of blessings to not only people that's thinking about starting businesses, but to me, myself, especially in my cigar journey. And that guy is beyond phenomenal. So I really do appreciate him stopping by. Right now, we're going to highlight your chance to win. You know, there you go. Go to Dapper D's Cigars. Is in the tickler below, where you can subscribe and be able to win an opportunity for a travel size humidor with 5 counts, a tri-blade straight cut, a cyclone lighter, and 5. And I said 5 Bella Artes Maduros, which is a rated cigar of the year for 2019 by Cigar Journal, which is another reputable company. So make sure you go and subscribe to that. We will be calling the winner, I believe, the 21st-ish of the 18th at 7:30 within our live virtual smoke deck. With that being said, I'm Jack the Cigar Enthusiast. I hope you guys really enjoyed our segment that we brought to you today, and I appreciate you tuning in. I'm Jack the Cigar Enthusiast, and I'm gone.